Hello, all, and welcome to Bennis Stories, a series of interviews with people who knew, loved, were influenced by, worked with, wrote with, were students and mentees of Warren Bennis. This is Kate Bennis, Warren's daughter. This series is created for the Warren Bennis Leadership Institute at the University of Cincinnati's Lindner College of Business. My partner in this endeavor is Betsy Myers. Betsy was a dear friend and colleague of Dad's, worked with him at the Center for Public Leadership at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government as its executive director. She has also been a senior advisor to both President Clinton and President Obama and is a senior advisor at the Warren Bennis Leadership Institute. Today, Betsy and I are delighted to welcome Ken Blanchard. Dr. Ken Blanchard is co-founder and chief spiritual officer of Blanchard, an international management training and consulting firm that he and his wife, Margie Blanchard, began in 1979. Ken's impact as an author is far-reaching. His iconic 1982 classic, The 1 Minute Manager, co-authored with Spencer Johnson, has sold more than 13 million copies and remains on bestseller lists today. In the past 3 decades, he has authored or co-authored 60 books, whose combined sales total more than 21 million copies. His groundbreaking works, including Raving Fans, The Secret, and Leading at a Higher Level, to name just a few, have been translated into more than 42 languages. In 2005, Ken was inducted into Amazon's Hall of Fame as one of the top 25 best-selling authors of all time. Welcome, Ken. We're so delighted to have you. Ken, how did you know Dad and how did you meet him? What was your relationship like?
I actually met him through Pat and Drea Zagarmi, who were 2 of my doctoral students. Pat was working in Washington. They had a relationship with the University of Buffalo. So she got to know Warren when he was provost up there. When she came to UMass, and Drea was one of my doctoral students, and we had him over at our house for dinner, and they fell in love and got married. When they were working on their dissertations, Pat called Warren and said, well, got any suggestions? And he said, well, why don't you come on over here? And he gave them an opportunity to be on the staff. So their dissertations were on Warren, and that's when I met him through them. Pat studied him as an internal change agent, and Drea studied him as an external change agent. Where I got to spend more time with him is when he left Cincinnati and went to USC as an endowed professor. And we ended up having almost monthly gatherings at the Viceroy Hotel in Santa Monica, and just sitting down and sharing and all that kind of thing. Warren was kind of a practicing theorist, not a research theorist. He didn't do all kinds of research per se, but he was a great observer. One of the things I think that everybody's got to get from Warren is the first place for your observation is to study yourself. What can you learn about yourself? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? How do you use those? And if you're working with other people, how do you have them fill you in areas that you need help? I love one of the quotes that I've used in my life from Warren that I got from this book is, I take an almost childlike pleasure in each day. There is always something to see, to taste, to hear, to learn. I live surrounded by people who I love and who love me. And so it's a thing of being really aware of what's happening around you, but also being around people you love and who loves you. This is quite a book. He finished a couple of years before he died, and he did it with Patricia Ward Biederman, because she did a lot of things with him, but it's a wonderful book, and the endorsements in the back are who's who, and Tom Peters and Howard Schultz from Starbucks, and just all kinds of great people. Rosabeth Cantor Moss.
You know, what's interesting, I have to say, Ken, that quote, like of all the quotes, just got me. Betsy too, right? It got me. It's so funny. Most people quote Dad about leadership, things like managers do things right, leaders do the right thing, or these. That quote, I have never heard anybody else pick that quote. And it is so powerful. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, well, that's how I think he lived. And that's the kind of thing we talked about when we got together. You know, not all these big theories per se, but it was really about life and observing. And he taught me a lot about being a participant observer in your own life. And I think that's really a key thing. His theories were really good. I always love, he said, leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality. And that requires a mastery of diverse set of skills and personal qualities to translate vision into reality. I really like, more than anything, of what he taught that I love to use and share with people are the 6 qualities of leadership. They're pretty powerful when you really think about it. He started off with integrity, which is about walking your talk and being consistent with who you are. And then dedication, which is a commitment to a specific task, why I'm really going to go after this. And once he set his mind on something, even if he got criticized, he was going forward. And then I can't ever even pronounce this very well, but Macaneni or something, being great of mind and heart, aspiring to greatness.
Magnanimous?
Yeah, magnanimity.
Magnanimity.
Yeah.
Magnanimity.
He might have made up that word. He sometimes made up words.
So magnanimous, right? Would be
But it's in terms of growing in your mind and your heart. And that's a really good one. Then one of my favorites that I talk about all the time is humility, because it's really key for a great leader is to get out of your own way. And people think people with humility, that's a weakness. No, I think it was C.S. Lewis that said, people with humility don't think less of themselves. They just think about themselves less, which is a really nice way to talk about it. Humility is a key characteristic of an effective leader. And then openness, listening to others, hearing their ideas. It's listening more than telling, asking. And then finally, creativity, thinking out of the box, which I think is so important for leaders to think about. He was pretty amazing, but he was constantly observing himself and what was going on around him, his theories and his concepts. What a perfect title for this book, Still Surprised.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that title of that book. That's so perfect.
It really is a perfect title for his final words,
Can I tell you, there's a story, I think it must be inspired by this. There was a man who was the mayor of Cincinnati when we were there. And when he was very, very old, in his 90s, almost 100 maybe years old, and my dad asked him, how do you feel when you wake up in the morning? And he said, surprised. So I think that's where that comes from. Still surprised.
I'm going to be 85 in May.
Oh, when's your birthday? May what?
May 6th.
I'm May 3rd.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're both Tauruses.
Yeah. Yep. So are my brothers. We're all in May. Poor parents. Stubborn kids.
Margie says, I'm delightfully stubborn.
Yeah.
As a Taurus.
Yeah.
It's just hard to imagine, as the time goes by, but that you have these extra years. And so we're lucky to have each other. Now, did Grace die before Warren or after?
No, Grace is alive. Grace is 90. She'll be turning 90 on January 28th. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, she's doing
when she was with him, she was just a puppy. He died in 2014.
He did.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. And my mom died, Clury. I don't know if you remember my mom, Clury. She died in 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you were going to teach these qualities of great leaders, do you think there's a way? How do you teach humility? How do you teach that? This program will be working with, how many undergraduates are there? Is it 40,000? Is that correct?
Yeah.
18 to 22-year-olds plus graduate programs. All of these kids are going to have access to the leadership development program. But how do you teach a 19, 20-year-old humility? How do you teach these things, Ken?
Well, I think you teach it by having a discussion about it. tell them, what leaders have you admired over your years and what made them special to you? And I'm sure that they're going to say something that has to do with humility, and then you can bring it out, because I think the best way to teach people is to dialogue with them, not to lecture to them. That's the really fun of teaching, really. My wife Margie and I taught a course for over 20 years at the University of San Diego as part of a master's degree program we started there in executive leadership, because I looked at all the MBA programs. They don't teach anything about leadership. They put it in an organizational behavior course. But I really feel that effective leadership, and I think this is what young people need to learn, is a journey beginning first with yourself that Warren really looked at is, what is it about you? And that's when you can start talking about some of these characteristics and also self-leadership. Then one-on-one leadership, when you're trying to influence somebody else, and what does that take? It really takes humility, is really powerful, and to realize that it's about we, not me. The best leaders don't say, look up the hierarchy because all the brains are in my office. They say it's about we, not me. And then the third is about team leadership. How do you lead a team of people? Finally, is organizational leadership. And in our program, we have at least 2 courses in each of those areas in the program. And we had 25 students in a cohort, and it really changed their lives, because we did talk about accounting and marketing, but typical MBA, that's where all the emphasis is. It's not on leadership.
So true.
So the leadership piece, you're right, is so key.
Yeah.
What do you think Dad would have made of, what do you think we need from Dad and his work now? I think you're carrying it on very strongly. But if Dad were here, what do you think he would be saying? Or what do you think we would need from him?
Well, I think the important thing is he distinguished that there's really 2 parts of leadership. There's vision and direction. And then is how do you get there, which is how do you take a vision and put it into reality? And I jumped on that when I really got into teaching about servant leadership, because a lot of people, when they initially heard about servant leadership, which, was a really important concept, is they thought they were talking about the inmates running the prison or trying to please everybody, or religious movement. But they don't understand there's 2 parts of servant leadership: vision, direction, values, and goals, because leadership's about going somewhere. And that comes from the hierarchy. And it doesn't mean that you don't involve people, but the responsibility for vision and direction is with you as a leader. But once that's clear, now you move to the servant part of servant leadership. And now you turn the traditional pyramid upside down. And now you work for your people. Your job is to help them win, which is what? Live according to the vision and values and goals. And so that's really a wonderful way to think about leadership, about those 2 aspects of it. And so servant leadership's about we, not me. And that would be something I think that Warren would have pitched in his own way. I think that's it. And I think these characteristics are really something powerful to teach young people. And teaching them is talking to them about it. What do these things really mean? What does integrity really mean to you? That's an important question. And what about dedication? I think you get some nice dialogue going there. So I think that's what I would bring forth. And the whole title is Still Surprised. Be a participant observer in your life and look around. And what can I learn today? A lot of people think at my age, 85, I'd be down in Florida sipping mint juleps and all that, but I'm still having a lot of fun. My title with our company, I'm the Chief Spiritual Officer. I don't have a direct responsibility over people, but I'm the head cheerleader. And Margie, she plays a role teaching courses to our people internally. Imagine she's teaching a course in career planning to our own people. Imagine, but it's not just a career planning to leave, but it's a career planning to where might you want to go in the organization, or where are your skills and things like that. So we're having a lot of fun at our age. This is going to be our 62nd year of marriage. Can you imagine?
Wow.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
I met her my senior year in college.
Oh,
She was a junior.
Where did you go? You went to Massachusetts, right? You went to
Went to Cornell, married a Cornellian. And so we're kind of obnoxious Cornellians.
so I didn't know Cornell was co-ed that long.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Well, it was interesting. I had a fellowship to go to Dartmouth. I was a basketball player, and I went up there to visit on a Thursday. And Friday at noon, everybody left campus except the drunks and the athletes, because it was an all-male school in a small town in New Hampshire. And so I called my sister, who was a sophomore at Cornell, and told her, and she said, I told you to come to Cornell. And we're co-ed. We were the first co-ed school in the Ivy League.
Really? Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
It was a fun place to go to school, really. And a PhD there, too.
Oh.
So I got my master's at Colgate, which was about an hour and a half away, in sociology. And then I came back to Cornell and got a PhD in educational leadership. And Margie got her master's degree. She was a speech pathology at Cornell. But after that, we went to the University of Massachusetts, and I was a professor there. And Margie got her PhD there. I taught for 6 or 7 years at Massachusetts.
What were you teaching?
Organizational behavior, leadership. And then we came to San Diego on sabbatical, because I had met Paul Hersey at Ohio University, which was my first job. My faculty in my doctoral program told me if I wanted to be at a university, I should be an administrator, because I couldn't write. And so my first job was as administrative assistant to the dean of the College of Business at Ohio University. And when I got there, Harry Everett, the dean, said, Ken, I want you to teach a course in the management department. And Paul Hersey had just come as chairman of the management department. And I never thought about teaching, because if you don't publish, you perish. And he said, I don't care anything about that. So I started teaching a course. After a couple of weeks, I came home and said to Margie, this teaching is fun. This is what I should be doing. She said, what about the writing? I said, I don't know. We'll figure something out. So I heard that Hersey taught a great leadership course. And in December 1966, I said to Paul, do you mind if I sit in on your course next semester? And he said, nobody audits my course. You want to take it for credit, you're welcome. And he walked away. And I thought that was something, because I had a PhD and he didn't. And so I went and told Margie, I said, he wants me to take his course, and I got a PhD and doesn't. She said, well, is he any good? I said, he's supposed to be great. She said, well, get your ego out of the course. Way and take his damn course. I had to talk the registrar into letting me. And so I took Hersey's course and wrote all the papers and all. And in June of 67, Paul comes into my office. He says, Ken, I've been teaching leadership for 10 years. I think I'm better than anybody, but writing isn't my great skill. And they want me to write a textbook. I've been looking for a good writer like you. Would you co-author it with me? I said, we should be quite a team. You can't write and I'm not supposed to. So we wrote a textbook called Management of Organizational Behavior. It's in its 10th edition now. And so I went to the dean and I said, I'm going to quit as an administrator. I got a textbook coming out. I'm going to be a faculty member. He said, you can't quit. I said, why not? He said, because I was going to fire you. I said, why? Because you're a lousy administrator, which I was. And, so I ended up being a faculty member, and then we went to UMass. That's where I worked my way up to a full professor with tenure, and then came back to San Diego because Paul had moved to San Diego and finished the 3rd edition of our book. So that was why we came out here. I ran into a group called the Young Presidents Organization. You're familiar with?
Oh, yeah.
I did some sessions for them, and they adopted me. And they said, what are you going to do at the end of the year? I said, we're going back to the university. They said, no, you're not. You're going to start your own company. We said, we can't even spell the word entrepreneur. How are we going to be one? They said, we'll help you. And 5 of these presidents became our advisory board, one from San Diego, one from Oregon, one from Illinois, one from Pennsylvania, one from New Mexico, and they flew in, helped us set up the company. We're our advisors for a number of years. This is the 42nd or third year of our company, and our kids are now running it. Our son Scott's the president. Our daughter Debbie's the head of marketing. Margie's brother Tom, who was born when she was a freshman at Cornell, he's our CEO. We got 280, 300 people working with us around the world.
Isn't that amazing? I love that story so much because so much of it reminds me of stories that Dad would tell when he interviewed people about how they found. Remember, I think it's John Gardner said, I was waiting to see what the world would pull out of me. Like these were strengths I didn't know I had. And when I hear about this, you were told you explicitly you don't have the writing gene or whatever, but they were wrong, right? That's so interesting that you fell into it despite that and then started a business and being a business owner.
We were at a cocktail party that Adelaide Bree organized. You remember Adelaide Bree? She wrote Visualizations, Directing the Movies of Your Mind. And she decided to have a party of all the authors in town. Since I had written this textbook, I got invited. Spencer Johnson was there, and he wrote children's books with his wife, a whole series called Value Tales, Value of Courage, the story of Jackie Robinson, The Value of Determination, the story of Helen Keller. And Margie met him first, and she hand carried him over. And she introduced him. She says, you guys should write a children's book for managers. They won't read anything else. I invited him to come to a seminar I was doing the next week. And he sat in the back, laughed, came running up at the end and said, forget parenting. Let's do the 1 Minute Manager. He was writing a book on the 1 minute scolding on how to discipline kids. And I talked a lot about praisings and goal setting. We met in the first week in November. We had a draft of the 1 Minute Manager by the time we were going to the Rose Bowl in Winnebago's at the end of December to share with people. And so I said to Spencer, God, people love this draft. Let's go to New York and get a book contract. He said, no. He said, they don't know us. They'll beat us up and take all the money. Let's self-publish it and build a track record. So we self-published. That Margie and I had to take a loan on our house in order to publish 20,000 copies of the book. And we sold them all. Then we went to New York and people were excited about it. And that's when we ended up getting a contract. In 1982, I was on the Today Show talking about the 1 Minute Manager. And the next week it went on the bestseller list and never left for 3 years, I think.
Amazing.
That is the most amazing story. Spencer was like a genius for titles.
Yeah, that's right.
He really was. Like my stepmom, Grace, who you know, wrote a book called Step Wars about being a step parent. And he said, you should call it Step Love.
Yeah.
People don't want to have wars. They want to have it's about love. Step love.
He wrote this book, Who Moved My Cheese? And I wrote the foreword. It's about these two humanoids, Ho and Hum, and two mice sniff and scurry. They're all in a maze.
Looking for cheese that's been moved.
Yeah.
He took Margie's advice, right? He knew that to speak to managers, you have to write like a children's book that they'll actually read. That's short.
Right, yeah. And so
millions of copies.
Most of my books are all parables too.
Yeah.
So I got into that thing. People love them, and none of them are more than about 190 pages. Where Warren's stuff were a little more theoretical, but tremendous personal stories in here. I mean, they weren't theoretical in the traditional sense. They were sort of, what did he observe in life? And he starts here when he's a kid in this book.
So if we were going to include, which we will, of course, one of your books in the curriculum for the kids at the University of Cincinnati, what book should they start with? What do you think are like maybe the top three that you think that a college student would love?
Well, I think that the 1 Minute Manager's got to be one of them. And then I wrote a book with Sheldon Bowles, who was a YPOer from Canada, called Raving Fans. Satisfied Customers Are Not Enough. And that's sold 2 million copies. So I'd give them that. And then also I would give them Leadership in the 1 Minute Manager that I co-authored with Pat and Drea Zagarmi on the situational leadership concept, because they had tested the theory in their work. So those are the 3 books I think I'd give them. I wrote one recently that I think it would be fun called Simple Truths of Leadership, 52 Ways to Become a Servant Leader and Build Trust with Randy Conley, who works with us and is one of the top guys in the country in the field of trust. And there's 26 simple truths on being a servant leader and 26 on building trust. And they really summarize all the stuff we've been teaching over the years too. So I might add that one too.
Yeah.
Love that. I think trust is huge, right? Especially right now.
Yeah.
That's vital. Yeah.
So the situational leadership, which is really what your Blanchard company wasn't that kind of the concept?
That's right. Yeah.
So say more about that. And did that came from the 1 Minute Manager, kind of moved into situational leadership?
Well, situational leadership actually came first. It was key in our textbook, Management of Organizational Behavior, because at that time there was a lot of people, and Warren didn't believe it. He would take them on too, that saying there was the best leadership style. When the managerial grid talked about team leadership was the only way, Warren and a bunch of us thought that was crazy. And then Paul and I started to think about initially raising a child. So in the beginning, when they're first born, you got to tell them what to do, how to do it, where to do it, and all. But if you continue to do that as they grow up, you're going to have a rebellious kid. And so we started looking at how you move from directing to coaching to supporting to delegating. And that began the situational leadership concept, which really started as a parent-child relationship.
Huh. So the 4 areas are what were the 4 again? Directing?
Directing, that's for people who are enthusiastic beginners.
Mm-hmm.
And then, coaching, because people get a little disillusioned. It's a little more difficult than I thought. So they not only need direction, they need tender, loving care. And then the capable but cautious means they got the skills, but they still need a little pat on the back, encouragement. And then finally delegating, where people can direct and support themselves. It's a pretty powerful concept, and it's held on for 40 years or more, and it's used all over the world, really.
Oh, yeah. Amazing. So what are you most proud of your work? When you look back on your illustrious career in leadership, what are you most proud of?
Well, Margie and I have been married 62 years. That makes me really pretty proud, because you see so much craziness. We still have more damn fun with each other and are in love. That's really special. Career-wise, I think situational leadership's got to be at the top of the thing. But the 1 Minute Manager was such an interesting thing that began the whole parable writing philosophy. I'm working on my 70th book. Can you imagine? One of the things, which is why I love Warren, is I love to learn from other people. And of those 70 books, there's only 2 I've written by myself.
Yes.
On golf, so many people helped my golf game. I didn't know who to write it with. And then my spiritual journey, and I didn't think I could co-author that, but I've written books with wonderful people. Colleen Barrett, who was the president of Southwest Airlines. I wrote one with the founder of Chick-fil-A, and Gary Ridge, who built WD-40, and just a lot of wonderful people, plus my founding associates, which are graduate students like Pat and Drea, who we brought on to the company. And so I've written books with them, and Don Carew and Eunice Parisi Carew and Laurie Hawkins and Fred Finch. And those are what we call our founding associates. Written books with all of them. And so it's been fun. I like to work with other people. And that's why meeting with Warren once a month or so and just talking, because he forgot more than most people know.
That's great.
I mean, because he was a constant learner. And that's what, this is such a great title, Still Surprised. I'm going, wow.
He was agreed with you on that, because that's a lot of his books, he collaborated.
Yeah, that's right.
Other people. He had that very similar thought that you have about learning from other people.
I don't think he did anybody completely just by himself.
And leaders might have been just Dad.
Maybe. But yeah, on Becoming a Leader, it looks like it's just his.
Yeah.
But most of his books, the others, so many he collaborated on.
Yeah. He would always say, Kate, got to bring in a pro. Get a pro.
Yeah. Well, when he got to USC and became kind of a distinguished professor, he loved that the most. If anything, he built on what he learned at Buffalo and what he learned at Cincinnati. But the fact that he could be with students and learn from them, it was just exciting. He was on fire. And everybody at the Viceroy Hotel, of course, knew him because he would bring his students there and have lunch, talk with them and build them up and learn from them.
Ken, have you ever heard of Doug Conant? He was the CEO of Campbell Soup.
Yes.
Yeah. He wrote an article when Warren passed called Breakfast at the Viceroy with Warren Bennis. And just his experience. He only knew Warren for the last couple of years of his life.
Yes.
But his experience of just meeting several times at the Viceroy and the impact it had on his career and the book that he wrote.
Oh, yeah, I'd like to see it.
Yeah. I'd love to send it to you. Yeah, he wrote a book called Touch Points, which was on Warren's imprint. Head, heart, and hands.
Yeah, that's become key in my thing, because I go from the heart to the head to the hands and then to habits. And now I've divided the habits into two. And so after the heart, I do the self habits of discipline and all. And then at the end, it's the external habits of listening to others.
Yeah. So well, that would be what sounds like that would be fabulous to share with this curriculum.
Wait, can you just say that again? So you start with the heart, the head, the hands, the habits, which are internal habits like listening. What was the other one?
The other one are the external habits of catching people doing things right and encouraging people and that kind of thing. It's focused on other people.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
The other thing that I just want to say is that what's so profound to me is that whenever we ask you some question, you answer with a question. So when I said, how would you teach that? You say, I would ask them what they think of humility. Or I love this so much to remind us all as we go in to create this curriculum that it's got to be full of questions.
Yeah. I don't know if you know, I have a Lead Like Jesus ministry now. It's all over the world. And the way that started was when the 1 Minute Manager came out, I was asked to be on Robert Schuller's Hour of Power, if you remember. He was a pastor in Orange County. When I was on his show, he said, Ken, I love the 1 Minute Manager, but you know who was the greatest 1 Minute Manager of all time? I said, who's that? He said, Jesus. I said, really? He said, yeah. He was really clear on goals. Isn't that your first secret 1 minute goal setting? Yeah. He said, Tom Peters didn't invent management by wandering around. Jesus did. He wandered one little village to another village. If anybody showed any interest, he praised them, healed them. Isn't that your second secret 1 minute training? Yeah. And if people stepped out of line, he wasn't afraid to give them a 1 minute reprimand. He threw the money lenders out of the temple. And now your third secret. And so I had been named after a Presbyterian minister and grew up in the church. But when I went to Cornell, I kind of disappeared. So I started to go back and read the Bible, the four Gospels. And I just laughed because everything I ever taught about leadership, Jesus did. Because if you look at situational leadership, his first commission, he told them what to do, where to go, how to do. They do this, dust off your feet. And then at the end of Matthew, all he says is go and make disciples and baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And that's the only direction he gives. He works them all the way through situational leadership. What we found out is that people were doing a lot with Jesus, but never talked to him about being a great leader. And so now we're in about 30 nations, and we have Muslims and all kinds of people coming to our things because we don't pitch religion. We just say, let's look at his leadership, because how many of you had hired 12 incompetent guys like he hired? And they're willing to give up their lives for your vision. That's a pretty powerful leadership.
Wow. Yeah. So talk about, when you say it's all over the world, what is it that you're actually guys are doing with this work?
Well, we have what we call a Lead Like Jesus encounter that goes through the heart, the head, the hands, habits, and teaches all that. And we wrote a book called Lead Like Jesus, and then we updated it. We called it Lead Like Jesus Revisited. And then we wrote another book called Lead Your Family Like Jesus. That's headquartered back east because I didn't want people to confuse that with our leadership training company out here. But it's all over the world. It's just amazing. I started it with a classmate of mine from Cornell, Phil Hodges, who I met on the bus going to orientation camp freshman year. And he was the guy that when the 1 Minute Manager came out, he said, Ken, I'd love to talk to you. Let's take a walk on the beach in La Jolla. And he said to me, Ken, why do you think the 1 Minute Manager has been so successful? And I said, I don't know, Phil. Somehow God must be involved. And I don't know why I said God. And he said, oh, thank God. And that was when I really started to look at the Gospels. And then I get a call when I write a book with Norman Vincent Peale, the great pastor of Marvel Collegiate, Positive Thinking. And I said, is he still alive? And they said, he's 86, but he's unbelievable. And so Margie and I flew to New York to meet with Norman and Ruth. And they said when they met us, the Lord's always had you on his team. You just haven't suited up yet. And so suiting up became the cry and all. And so.
Did you write a book with him then, Ken?
Yes. Yeah. The Power of Ethical Management. You don't have to cheat to win. Where was Warren spiritually? I can't remember. Was he much in his spiritual journey, or? I know he was Jewish.
For the last maybe 15 or 20 years of his life, he meditated regularly.
Yeah. So he got.
I always think he never ascribed to any religion per se, really. I don't know. I mean, I can't answer for him, but I would imagine that his idea of being open to everything.
Yeah, well, he
constantly curious.
With Buddhists, that's where he got into the meditation.
Yeah. I remember I asked him, I said, do you feel different now that you're meditating? And he said, no. I said, well, why do you do it? He said, I just do.
Yeah. Well, I think he thought it was really good to quiet your mind sometime. If I quiet myself in prayer and all, and I think of something I never would have thought of before, I give the good Lord credit for that. Presbyterian Church that we're members of here, the pastor left, and he was a good buddy of mine. And so they were searching for a new pastor, and I'm riding in the car, and I often imagine Jesus sitting in the seat next to me. And I said, well, what do you think I can do to help? Next thought I had is, why don't you be the interim pastor? I never would have thought of that. So I got a hold of the guy who was heading up the committee looking. I said, what do you think about me being the interim pastor? He said, you do that? And so for 16 months, I was the interim pastor at our church.
Oh my God.
I love that. But again, it's asking questions, right? Starting with the question.
Yeah. Yeah. So what should I do?
What should I do? Just asking these questions of ourselves. That's the sense of humility, right? Is that if we're always asking questions, it means we don't necessarily know the answers.
That's right. And that's why I think I don't ever argue that there's one religion that's any better than the better. I think it's just important that people have something more important than themselves that they look to and quiet themselves for guidance. And your dad said he didn't get anything out of it. I guarantee he got something out of it.
But I just love the fact that he would do it anyway, just because he just kind of knew. In other words, he put the expectations away.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this for a product or an expectation. I'm doing it.
Yeah, or to write
about
it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a question about your marriage.
Yes.
Because the first thing you said you were proud of was this incredibly long marriage. And I'm married myself, and I'm just always curious about what are the things we have. Did you ever meet the Alshulers, John Alshuler and Diana Diamond? He was the city manager of Santa Monica, and they were dear friends. And she was at UMass, commuting back and forth for a PhD. Yeah. And I remember she then wrote a book on being married after they were married 40 years or something. And people always say to her, well, what is the key? What's the magic to staying married for 40 years? And she said, you just stay married. It was interesting, like it's hard sometimes and you just continue.
Well, one of the things that I tell people, and Margie, it was Principal Margie, is that we never went to bed angry. That we would stay up until 2 or 3 in the morning to deal with a disagreement. And I think that's really, really key. And I think the fact that we both supported each other, it wasn't me being supported by Margie while she did everything. We did things together. And even though I was on the road a lot at times, but I would call home every night and get on the phone with the kids. I think one of the reasons they're running our company is that we have such a close relationship with Scott and Debbie. But Margie's been key on that, which they would admit. And then the other thing is that we have, I think, about 10 or 12 couples that we all met at Cornell. And fraternity brothers of mine, they either married their high school sweethearts or they married a co-ed. And we stayed in touch. In fact, I organize a Zoom call about every couple of months. 3 of the guys have died, but the spouses get on the call and we catch each other up on things. And only 1 out of the 12 has gotten divorced, and he married somebody his mother wanted him to marry. We didn't like her. But then he divorced her and he married one of the guy's sisters. I think that's what's helped keep us together too, is that we've had tremendous support. And one of the couples had a place in Aspen, and we would all go there and ski for a week. And the guys, we play golf together, and we all met in 1957, 58. Ridiculous.
Amazing.
To stay in touch that long.
Amazing.
Community. So you have community around you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really important, particularly in a time where there's so much written today about loneliness and disconnection, and the statistics are alarming. Yeah. And so how you've had such community, not in your family, in your business, in your friendships, in your life.
Yes, I think.
And your book writing, you're an author as an author too.
Sure, yeah. And I think that loneliness is Margie's really interested in that, and has done a lot of work on reaching out to people and trying to have them look at their lives. What are they doing to unlonely themselves?
Yes.
Rather than just feeling sorry. We always feel you're responsible for the condition you're in.
Yes.
And that's really kind of a rework of stuff that Warren said.
Yeah.
You're responsible for the condition you're in. Your life is in your hands. What are you doing blaming somebody else?
So if you have this cohort of kids in their late teens, early 20s, there is a sense of a lack of purpose that I'm noticing. And I think that previous generations had a sense of purpose and service.
Yes.
And I think what's great about the University of Cincinnati is because they have this co-op program, the kids do feel a sense of purpose pretty early on because they're in businesses doing work, and they come out and they all have jobs. It's amazing.
Yes.
But what do you think in terms of helping kids at this generation feel that sense of purpose, which I think is connected to the unlonelying, right, that you talked about?
Yeah, I think, again, it's asking them questions. As you look back on your life, what would you like it to stand for? What would you like to be remembered? And Margie has an exercise she does with young people and all. It's 10 years from now. Where will you be living? Who will you be living with? What will you be doing, and how you will be feeling about it? And that really gets them thinking about their life. My God, 10 years. If they were 15, they'd be 25. If they're 18, they're 28. We told the kids in our family we weren't going to leave them any money. We were going to spend money to gather us together and do stuff. So we took 21 people down in the Bahamas for Thanksgiving, and they had to get there, but we picked up all the expenses while everybody was there. We had a house with 10 bedrooms. And,
lovely.
And the 21st person was our first great-grandchild, a pretty amazing little girl. We call her Nora TV because everybody's watching her.
Oh. That's such a wonderful philosophy to say, we're going to leave you with experiences. Betsy, is there anything else, or Ken, is there anything else you wanted to add? I'm just mindful of the time.
No, I just appreciate your reminding me about my time with Warren and about his impact, because it's been a while, 2014 when he passed away. And so I appreciate that, because he was an amazing person, as I say, an ongoing learner. And he just loved to talk about asking questions and all. I mean, he was a great one of questioning you and asking you things. Our gatherings up at the Viceroy were really pretty special times. So I'm glad Mike found this book, Still Surprised. I had forgotten about it because he had a copy too that Warren gave him. My time at UMass with those graduate students was really something. And they helped us start our company.
Amazing.
Hey, Ken, I just can't thank you enough. I have to say, you've always been so generous. I reached out to you a few years ago, before COVID, actually, and you said, I'll do anything. I'll be there. Just so generous. I can't tell you how much that means to me.
Well, I appreciate you, and I appreciate your dad. And family is important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the fact that you've learned so much from him, and he learned from you. And
All right. Well, take good care, Ken.
all righty. Well, thanks so much. You guys are great.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Love to you.
Love
Big
her
hugs.
best.
Happy New Year.
All righty.